Here Burke was well liked, mainly because of his extreme generosity. His favorite saying was, "Keep the change." He always had enough $50 bills in his pocket to pay for a good-sized room. Even after he was convicted of murder in Benton Harbor, Michigan, some of the townspeople resented Hunsaker's turning him in. Burke was identified through a picture in a detective story magazine. Joe Hunsaker devoured every word of every detective story that he could obtain with a ravenous appetite. He spent his evenings analyzing crimes and dreaming of himself as a one-man Scotland Yard. The townspeople kidded him frequently about this trait. He certainly laughed best and last when he brought about Burke's capture. Burke did not come to town often. Usually he showed up at the Shell gas station, where Hunsaker worked, about once a week. Burke was most considerate of the folks at home. He rarely returned to the farm without some candy or some ice cream. On this day is to be ice cream. The woman behind the counter is Miss Beale, who was subsequently married to Lawyer Morrison. Burke looks at the detective story magazines, evidently slightly uneasy because of their presence in the town where he was hiding. He pays her with the customary, "Keep the change." It is strange that more people were not suspicious of him, but he didn't come into town very often. He wasn't seen again after this day until over a week later. Burke always had his tank filled to overflowing on his way back to the farm, even if it took only a gallon. This is one of the little details that originally aroused Hunsaker's suspicions. Hunsaker is sure enough of himself now to write for additional information on Burke. He is afraid that the details would get back to Burke if it were taken up with the Chicago Police Department, so that they decide to write to St. Joseph for their information. Morrison hates to take a chance on using the mails, but there is no other way out. However, he takes as few chances as he possibly can and carries the letter to the post office himself. He tells them that if this man is Burke, it is a very serious matter, and they'll have to act quickly, thoroughly, and most efficiently. This police department handled this matter well. They acted with caution, but when they did act, they knew what they were doing. He decides to answer Morrison and tells Kelly and Swepson to get all of the dope on Burke out of the file and go down to Green City and make an investigation for themselves. Meanwhile, Burke has returned to Green City, and he unwittingly drives up to buy gasoline from the man who has already started the machinery in motion that is to result in his capture. A few days later, Joe was still studying Burke's picture. If this isn't his man, he will be the laughingstock of the community, so he has to be sure. It's awfully fortunate that Burke never caught Joe with a magazine. If he had, it had been just too bad for Joe. Joe is positive that this is Burke. He decides that he hasn't enough opportunity to observe Burke in the station, so he arranges to work for a few days in his sister's restaurant. On his daily trip to the post office 2 days later, Morrison gets a reply from Chief Matthews at St. Joseph, so he hurries to his office where he has an appointment with Joe. They have both been on pins and needles for days, and they are anxious to find out more about their man.